Have you ever thought about how one tiny, seemingly insignificant decision can change the entire course of history? In chaos theory, they call it the butterfly effect, the idea that the flap of a butterfly wings in Brazil could set off a tornado in Texas, but in Hollywood. This theory is the secret engine behind some of the greatest stories ever told. Today we are looking at those exact moments. We're diving into the movies where one split-second choice, one missed phone call, or one minor character's mistake created a massive ripple effect that changed everything. We are talking about the decisions that turned heroes into villains, saved empires from crumbling, or led to the literal end of the world. From the sci-fi corridors of the MCU to the magical halls of Hogwarts, these are the what-if scenarios that keep fans awake at night. If just one thing had gone differently, your favorite movie would have ended in the first 10 minutes. So grab your popcorn and get ready to question everything you know about cinematic logic. These are the top 10 butterfly effect moments in movie history that changed everything. Let's start with the punch heard round the universe. We all remember the high-stakes battle on Titan in Avengers Infinity War. The plan was perfect. Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians of the Galaxy had Thanos pinned down, and Mantis had him under control. They were seconds away from pulling the Infinity Gauntlet off his hand. The universe was about to be saved. And then, Star-Lord happened. Upon learning that Thanos had sacrificed Gamora, Peter Quill lost his mind. He couldn't hold back his emotions and started punching the Mad Titan in the face. This broke Mantis's trance. Thanos woke up, and the rest is history. Half of all life in the universe was wiped out with a single snap. But here is the real butterfly effect. If Quill had just waited 5 more seconds, the snap never would have happened. Tony Stark wouldn't have died in Endgame. Black Widow would still be alive. The entire landscape of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was altered because one man couldn't control his temper for a few heartbeats. It's arguably the most frustrating small choice in movie history, but without it, we never would have seen the epic finale that redefined a decade of cinema. Was it a mistake, or was it the only way? Doctor Strange seemed to think it was the latter, but fans are still debating it to this day. Now let's go way back to the beginning of a galaxy far, far away. Think about the very first 10 minutes of Star Wars. A New Hope, Princess Leia's ship is being boarded by Darth Vader. She hides the Death Star plans inside. RRDR. And the droids head for an escape pod. As the pod launches, an Imperial officer on the Star Destroyer looks at his screen and says, "Hold your fire. There are no life forms on board. Stop right there." That is the ultimate butterfly effect. That one officer's decision to save a little bit of ammunition changed the fate of the galaxy. If he had just pressed the button to destroy that empty pod, the Death Star plans would have been vaporized. R2-D2 and C-3PO would be scrap metal. Luke Skywalker would have stayed a farm boy on Tatooine. Obi-Wan Kenobi never would have left his hut. And the Empire would have ruled for 1,000 years. The entire rebellion lived or died based on one lazy officer who didn't want to shoot at a droid. It's a reminder that in the Star Wars universe, the smallest no can lead to the biggest yes for freedom. Now, let's travel to the wizarding world. Specifically to a moment that has bothered Harry Potter fans for over 20 years. We're talking about the Marauders map in The Prisoner of Azkaban. This magical map shows everyone, and I mean everyone, currently inside Hogwarts. For 3 entire years, Fred and George Weasley owned this map. They used it every single night to sneak around, avoid teachers, and find secret passages. But here is the massive butterfly effect. Fred and George spent years looking at that map, and yet they somehow never noticed that their younger brother, Ron, was sleeping every single night with a man named Peter Pettigrew. Peter was supposed to be dead. He was a famous mass murderer in the eyes of the public. If Fred or George had looked at Ron's dormitory on the map just once and said, "Hey Ron, who's this Peter guy in your bed?" everything would have changed instantly. Sirius Black wouldn't have had to break out of Azkaban to hunt Scabbers. Remus Lupin wouldn't have nearly died in the Forbidden Forest. But most importantly, Lord Voldemort would never have returned to power in the Goblet of Fire. Pettigrew was the one who found Voldemort and helped him regain his body. If the Weasley twins had simply been more observant, the Second Wizarding War never happened. Cedric Diggory lives and Dumbledore stays alive. The fate of the entire magical world rested on two pranksters actually reading a map properly. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest villains are only able to rise because the good guys were just a little too busy looking for the next secret passageway to the kitchen. Moving from magic to the gritty streets of Christopher Nolan's Gotham, The Dark Knight is often called the greatest superhero movie ever made, and its most devastating moment is a perfect example of the butterfly effect. We're talking about the moment the Joker traps Harvey Dent and Rachel Dawes in two separate locations rigged with explosives. He gives Batman the addresses, but he swaps them. Batman thinks he's going to save Rachel, the woman he loves, but he ends up saving Harvey instead. This single, manipulated choice by the Joker is the turning point for the entire trilogy. And if Batman had managed to save Rachel, or if the police had arrived at Harvey's location just 30 seconds earlier, the White Knight of Gotham never would have fallen. Rachel was the only thing keeping Harvey's morality intact. Her death didn't just break Harvey's heart, it broke his mind, transforming him into Two-Face. But the ripple effect goes even further. Because of Two-Face's rampage, Batman had to take the blame for Harvey's crimes to protect Gotham's hope. This led to Batman going into exile for 8 years, the city living under a lie called the Dent Act, and eventually the rise of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. If that one explosion hadn't killed Rachel, the Joker would have lost. Batman would have retired happily, and the city wouldn't have been pushed to the brink of nuclear destruction years later. It's a masterclass in how a villain can win not by being stronger, but by forcing a hero to make a choice that has consequences he can never take back. One life lost, one hero fallen, and a whole city's future rewritten in a flash of gasoline and fire. Let's talk about a rainy night on Isla Nublar that changed the history of science and cinema forever. We all know the story of Jurassic Park. Man brings dinosaurs back to life. Man loses dinosaurs. Dinosaurs eat man. But have you ever stopped to think that the entire collapse of the park, the deaths of several people, and the subsequent sequels were all caused by one man's financial debt? I'm talking about Dennis Nedry. The butterfly effect here starts with a simple, greedy choice. Nedry decides to steal dinosaur embryos for a rival company. To do this, he has to shut down park security systems for just a few minutes so he can reach the docks. He thinks he's in control. He thinks it's just a quick in-and-out job. But then the storm hits. His car gets stuck, he meets a Dilophosaurus, and he never makes it back to turn the power back on. But look at the ripple effect. If Nedry hadn't been underpaid, or if he hadn't decided to use that specific can of Barbasol shaving cream to hide the embryos, the fences never would have gone cold. The T-Rex would have stayed in her paddock. Lex and Tim would have finished their tour safely. And John Hammond's dream would have become a functional, multi-billion-dollar reality. Instead, that one act of corporate espionage led to the total destruction of the park, the abandonment of the island, and decades of chaos that eventually led to dinosaurs roaming the mainland in Jurassic World, the fate of an entire prehistoric ecosystem. And the lives of everyone on that island were decided by a disgruntled IT guy who just wanted a quick payday. It's the ultimate lesson in how the smallest crack in a system can lead to a total extinctionable event. It's impossible to talk about The Butterfly Effect without mentioning the movie that is literally built on the concept, Back to the Future. But while the whole movie is about time travel, there is one specific tiny moment that defines the entire stakes of the story. It's not the DeLorean and it's not the lightning strike, it's the photograph that Marty McFly carries in his pocket. The moment Marty steps out of the time machine in 1955 and accidentally saves his father from being hit by a car, he sets off a catastrophic chain reaction. By taking his father's place in that accident, he causes his mother, Lorraine, to fall in love with him instead of George. At first it seems like a funny, awkward situation, but then Marty looks at the photo of him and his siblings, and he sees his brother's head slowly disappearing. This is the butterfly effect in its purest, most terrifying form. One accidental step into the street didn't just change a conversation. It began erasing Marty's entire existence from the timeline. If Marnie had been just 1 second slower, or if George McFly had been standing 2 inches to the left, the world would have stayed the same. But because of that one shift, Marty had to spend the rest of the movie fighting to make his parents fall in love, or he would vanish into thin air. The irony? By fixing his mistake, he created a new ripple. He'd turned his father from a loser into a successful author and changed his family's future for the better. It's the perfect example of how one small oops in the past can either delete you from history or give you the life you always dreamed of, depending on how well you can play the guitar at a high school dance. In the world of science fiction, there is no moment more iconic than the choice between the red pill and the blue pill. But have you ever looked at this moment through the lens of the butterfly effect? Think about the position Morpheus was in. He'd spent his entire life searching for the one. He had found potential candidates before and they had failed. Now he's sitting across from a confused computer hacker named Thomas Anderson. Everything, the freedom of Zion, the end of the machine war, and the fate of every human being plugged into the Matrix rested on a single muscle movement in Neo's hand. If Neo had been just a little more afraid, or if he had chosen to believe that his life as a coder was good enough, he would have taken the blue pill, he would have woken up in his bed, believed whatever he wanted to believe, and the resistance would have eventually collapsed. But the ripple effect is even deeper. If Neo hadn't taken that pill, Agent Smith would have eventually deleted the resistance from within. There would be no savior to negotiate peace with the machines. The human race would have remained a battery source forever, and the cycle of the Matrix would have simply reset again and again in a never-ending loop of digital slavery. That one swallow, that one decision to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, didn't just change Neo's life, it broke a 1,000-year-old system of control. It's the ultimate proof that the truth isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you have to choose even when the alternative is so much easier. Finally, we have to talk about the most important chance meeting in the history of Middle-earth. Long before Frodo set out for Mount Doom, his uncle Bilbo Baggins was lost in the dark tunnels of the Misty Mountains. He was cold, he was tired, and he was terrified. And there, on the ground, his hand brushed against a small, cold gold ring. This is the ultimate butterfly effect of the fantasy genre. As Gandalf famously said, "There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil." If Bilbo had crawled just 2 inches to the left, he would have missed the ring if he hadn't decided to play a game of riddles with the creature Gollum. He never would have found the way out. But most importantly, and this is the part that changed the world, if Bilbo had chosen to kill Gollum when he had the chance, the ring never would have been destroyed. Think about that ripple effect. Bilbo's mercy toward Gollum in that dark cave allowed Gollum to live long enough to lead Frodo to Mordor, and eventually to fall into the fire with the ring when Frodo couldn't let it go. If Bilbo had been a braver warrior and struck Gollum down, Sauron would have eventually won. The world was saved not by a king's sword or a wizard's staff, but by a small hobbit who found a golden trinket in the dark and chose pity over hate. One tiny object picked up by one tiny person ended an age of darkness. It's a reminder that even the smallest person can change the course of the future, often without even knowing they are doing it. So, what have we learned? From the rainy docks of Jurassic Park to the cosmic battles of the Avengers, the history of cinema is written in the margins of small decisions. A punch thrown in anger, a map left unread, a pill swallowed in a dark room. These aren't just plot points. They are the butterfly effects that remind us how fragile our stories really are. Every movie we love is just one different choice away from being a completely different story. And maybe that's why we keep coming back to them. We love to imagine the what-ifs because they remind us that in our own lives, the small choices we make every day, who we talk to, which path we take when we choose to speak up, might be setting off ripples that we won't see for years to come. But I want to hear from you. Which of these butterfly effects frustrates you the most? Is there a moment I missed that you think changed everything? Maybe a choice in a horror movie that led to everyone's doom? Or a romantic comedy where one missed train changed a lifetime of love? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through cinematic chaos, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and remember, watch your step. You never know which butterfly you might be stepping on. I'll see you in the next one.